Campbell.
And I'm Ron Jackson.
Cerebral conversations on disability liberation and integration. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cerebral Conversations, episode 25. This is Cerebral Conversations, conversations on disability liberation and integration. I'm CJ Campbell.
And I'm Ron Jackson.
Ron, let's get
Cerebral.
boom. Tell me about your week.
My week has been amazing.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
First, it began with some pretty good chili made by Alexis. Thank you, Alexis.
Who's Alexis?
One of my PAs.
Oh, dang. Nothing like a good PA.
Yes.
Hey, Alexis.
Now, I have my very first flat screen HD television.
Oh, dang.
Yes.
You making stuff happen.
Yes.
Gonna be watching some stuff on that TV.
Yes. Some wrestling on an HD television ought to be interesting.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
So I've had a good week. How was your week?
Well, I've been battling some depression the last few weeks, so that's been kind of rough on me. And I had to take a road trip yesterday. That's why we didn't get to do the show on Wednesday. So that's why we're having a special Thursday night edition of Cerebral Conversations. A close friend of mine's mom passed away, so I had to go to a funeral in Michigan. And so we drove to Chelsea, Michigan. I did have some fun along the way, and on the way back, I got to eat at Big Boy for the first time. For those of you that don't know, one of my favorite books of all time, for the last 10 years of my life, up until very recently, when I read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, The Perks of Being a Wallflower has been my favorite book, hands down. So for those of you that have read that book, or maybe seen the movie Big Boy, it's a huge part of that story, so that was cool. There's an awesome picture of me on Facebook next to the Big Boy, going like this. Other than that, the funeral was nice as far as funerals go. And we went to, I believe it's called the 59 Barbecue Pit in Chelsea, Michigan. And I didn't eat any food there because I'm a vegetarian and it's not very vegetarian friendly. Barbecue pits tend to not be, but I did have a Michigan beer called Pickaxe Blonde Ale. It was a very blonde ale. It looked like straight up pee. Not gonna lie, I wasn't necessarily crazy about it. It did have a nice little crisp flavor, but I tend to like my beers to be a little bit more robust.
If you describe it as pee, it doesn't sound very appetizing.
I think it's a good beer for people that don't like the taste of beer.
So for me, you're saying
I don't know if you would like it, but you have weird taste buds, so I don't know. So yeah, my body's pretty sore and stiff, and I was pretty tired. Woke up really late. But we're doing a show. We're excited about it. 25 episodes. 25 episodes. That's pretty awesome for us. Thanks for to all our fans that give us support and trying to make this show happen. You are small, but you are mighty, and we love you.
Keep being cerebral.
So, on episode 25, what are we conversating about?
We are discussing more of sexuality and disability. And we're covering a variety of topics from porn to devoteeism to surrogacy.
Yes. So let's start off the talk with pornography.
Yes.
I gotta be honest, we have been talking about doing this particular episode for a very, very long time. And it's gonna be something that I'm going to struggle with. I'm not going to try to bring in I'm going to do my best to not bring in my own personal moral convictions into the conversation as best I can. For those of you that are offended by my own personal moral convictions. If I do bring them in, I'm doing the best I can. But pornography is definitely a big part of the crippled community.
Yes. I would say that pornography is the one type of media that allows crippled brothers and sisters to feel some sort of connection to their sexuality aside from like talking to peers and whatnot.
Yeah, and something that I was thinking about is that I think pornography is one area where disability doesn't play a factor in your ability to consume.
Yes.
I mean, we are in an age where you can get pornography anywhere. You can get it for free on the internet, and so I mean, maybe if you have visual problems, that might be one area. But for those who have maybe ambulatory issues, they get to consume pornography in the same ways that everybody else does.
And even if you do have visual impairments, there's always audio you can find of the same sort of thing.
So let's talk a bit about what role pornography plays within a crippled brother or sister's life.
Okay.
Um, when I was younger, pornography was a huge part of my life. I mean, I would say to where it was a borderline addiction for me,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, it definitely became this place of like safety for me. And I think that that's one of kind of the draws of pornography. Also, just the fact that um, it allows a person to overcome barriers in their lives through a fantasy world where they can engage in any way they want.
Right.
What is kind of your views on pornography being a healthy thing or an unhealthy thing?
I personally believe it can be healthy as long as the person is mentally capable of handling it in small doses.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you become addicted to it, it can become very unhealthy. For example, I do view porn occasionally, but it's not something that I feel like I have to do on a regular basis. So that's just my personal stance on it.
So essentially, you think that it has potential to be unhealthy,
Yes.
and there is potential for someone to consume in a healthy way.
Yes, that's what I believe.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, and I guess where I struggle is that I've never seen pornography enrich someone's life. I've seen it help them temporarily where you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with something, and then you view pornography for. I think the average person views pornography for like 8 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So for 8 minutes, you enter into this fantasy world where you get to engage in whatever you wish, and then you come back to reality, and there are people who I guess move on from that, and there's some that don't. I guess where my concern runs in with pornography is, especially for crippled brothers and sisters, when you don't, where I think that I've seen it become a crutch for so many people, where they run into frustrations with trying to find relationships both platonically and non-platonically, and they can't find them. So then there's this secret hidden world where they can engage and no one rejects them.
Yeah.
And I've just seen it eat people alive. I mean, both like crippled brothers and sisters and able-bodied brothers and sisters, but I think that kind of the dividends for crippled brothers and sisters is a lot heavier because there's already a built-in functioning isolation in a lot of crippled brothers and sisters world, and the action of viewing pornography. Most people don't like hang out with their friends and like look at boobs together, or like like I've very rarely heard of like a bunch of women getting around and just watching porn together. I mean, I'm sure it does happen. But most people view pornography on their own, and it's kind of just something that they engage on their own. And so that kind of lends into the isolation of what people feel in disability. And I know from my own personal experience, the isolation I felt, like eventually you just keep jumping into that world more and more and more because there's no rejection. Like you just click and click and click. No one ever be like, hey, I don't want you to look at my body. You're icky. Get away from me. It's like everyone, like every woman you see on the screen, like is always like, yes, you're amazing. You know. But it is so much a part of my experience within the crippled community. I mean, I know people that they look at pornography, hours at a time, a day. But it is a way for someone to engage in sexuality without having to depend on someone else. And I think that that's one of the draws of pornography usage. And for me to deny that and say, like, no, it is a way for you to engage in your sexuality without being dependent on another person. So it does give you a small sense of independence.
Yes.
Is there anything that you want to add within that?
I also feel like it can be a temporary escape from the frustrations of reality as long as you're able to keep those boundaries of healthy time limits, which is difficult.
It is. I don't really run into many people that can.
Yes.
But like, once you get into it, I haven't seen very many people that like are like, yeah, I just look at it, like once a month or whatever. I'm not saying that those people can't exist.
It would definitely be difficult if you got into it on a regular basis for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall thing, like taking out my personal moral views, I don't see it. I've never really seen pornography help someone pursue real life relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I've only kind of seen it like, well, I can't get those things, so I get it here.
Right.
So I've never seen pornography like motivate someone to like pursue healthy relationships.
Right.
So there's this thing called devoteeism.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of it?
You were actually the first person I heard it from. I was like, what is that?
Yeah, so devoteeism is actually a thing, and it is interesting. For those of you that don't know what a person who claims to be a devotee is it someone who finds people with disability as sexually attractive. And in some cases, they only find people with disability sexually attractive. So it is kind of seen as part of the fetish community. And I'm going to be very careful to not try to shame anyone who would consider themselves a devotee. And I think I also need to uh, clarify that it's not anyone who finds someone with a disability sexually attractive. It's the very nature of disability that they find sexually attractive, not necessarily the person with disability. It is what I have found in researching it, because I just found out about it through basically people approaching me on the internet. And we had, after your breakup, as a joke, we were perusing dating sites, and we found out what devoteeism is.
Yes.
So I'm going to really try. We're both going to really try to not necessarily make people who claim to be devotees as bad people in any way. We will talk about some of the issue that we have with in a broad sense of what devoteeism is, though. So devoteeism, from what I've seen, it generally is most popular among males. It is. It can bridge the gap between male and female and heterosexuality and homosexuality, but it also kind of it jumps and transcends kind of all sexual barriers. Like there are people who label themselves as heterosexual that still find men with disability as sexually attractive. So it gets a little gray. From what I've seen is that the most popular is amputees. So their form of quote unquote pornography, to a person who doesn't know what devoteeism is, wouldn't even recognize it as pornographic, because it might just be a woman clearly showing a stump of her arm or her leg, and it wouldn't be what I guess the average person would see as a pornographic thing.
Right.
But it is a part of the disability community. I have talked to people who have had run-ins with devotees. Mostly it's been negative, because there is a bit of a power dynamic within certain aspects of the devotee community, where the able-bodied person kind of has a lot of control over the person with disability. What are your kind of overall feelings of devoteeism?
Well, I feel like, just from the basic rudimentary definition of it, that it's not healthy for the disabled person, just because it enforces the idea of being a subset to the culture.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Those are my basic feelings on the issue.
I don't want to make someone out to be a bad person, but I can only speak from how my understanding speaks to me. I don't think the idea of fetishizing a person with disability is a healthy thing, and it respects their personhood. There is also a side of it that there are, in extreme forms of the devotee community, there's also what's called wannabeism, that's where people uphold people with disability so highly that they wish themselves to be disabled, and some have even maimed themselves to be considered disabled. But I think that when you view someone with disability from a sexual standpoint, and their disability is what you find to be the most sexually pleasing thing about them, it's not really respecting their personhood. It's more you enjoying their body. And I'm not saying like if someone has a non-conventional body that you shouldn't find them sexually attractive, but if the goal and the motivation of your attraction is their disability, that's a bit different than loving that person for who they are. Um, but like I said, I don't necessarily want to bring on shame to anybody who identifies within the category of devoteeism. But I can only speak from my own personal understanding.
It's difficult because I have most of the same views, but like you said, I also want to respect people who do feel as though they're devotees and the people who actually enjoy being in that type of relationship. It's just from my personal opinion and understanding, I think it's wrong to value someone strictly for their disability.
Yeah. So for you, crippled brothers and sisters who may run into someone who would consider themselves a devotee, I would say just like in any sort of online interaction, just be careful. There are predatory people out there, and they're not just devotees. I mean, they're people who may you may consider to have like normal sexual desires, quote unquote. Just be careful and know that you can get hurt by these things. I think that's kind of all I have to say about devoteeism. Hopefully, we haven't made someone feel too terrible, or although I'm probably going to assume that we did.
I would assume.
So let's move on to this hot button topic of sexual surrogacy.
Oh goodness.
Now, probably those of us in the United States don't know what sexual surrogacy is. And sexual surrogacy is basically for countries that have legalized prostitution. It is when someone either performs sexual acts on a person with disability as a form of therapy, or it could even be where a personal assistant will negotiate with a prostitute for their client. This is something that we won't really run into a whole lot in the U.S., but it basically gets down to this root question: is sex a basic human right? And should disability disqualify you from engaging in sexuality from a legal standpoint? And this is one that I am just really, really wrestling with on a whole lot of levels.
Yeah, I struggle with this too because on one hand I feel like as human beings we should have a right to explore our sexuality, and if we need a sexual surrogate to do that, then we should have that right. But on the other hand, I disagree with the way in which we would have to go about it and the position we would put like a personal assistant in by crossing that boundary of professionalism.
Mm-hmm. I think for me is that I get the need, because really like the need is for human touch, human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that I have is I don't know if I can necessarily say like this is the best solution to this problem. I think it's a solution. I just don't know if it's the best one. You know, because I've watched. There's a documentary on Vice. It's really short, just about a man with cerebral palsy. I believe he's either in Japan or China, and he has a woman come in. I think once a week, and she undresses him, cleans him, and then basically masturbates him, and he finds a lot of comfort in that, and he gets to experience human touch, and he gets kind of a sexual release, which, I mean, scientifically, it's proven that a sexual release is going to have positive effects on your biochemistry.
Right.
I think that really the deep need is for human interaction, for human touch, for affection, and this is a way to get it. Where I struggle is like, is this the best way? Because just like with pornography, something that I am concerned with is that our crippled brothers and sisters, are they going to stop making effort to pursue um, relationships, both platonically and non-platonically, because they've found a way to get their need without having to face the rejection? I mean, a prostitute isn't going to reject you.
True.
A sex therapist isn't going to reject you. Um, and but like, I get it at the same time. I really do.
For me, I feel like this issue is different from pornography simply because of the sexual therapy aspect of it. The surrogate may be able to give advice on like different strategies of pursuing a relationship, whereas if you just watch the pornography, then you're not getting any feedback at all. You're just getting stimulation.
Yeah, and also for me, I mean, I'm sure most of you can really tell that I struggle with all of these issues, trying to be as fair and non-judgmental as possible, and I'm really trying to draw a line between prostitution and sexual therapy. Um, I mean, obviously, with my religious moral views, I think that sex should only happen within a commitment, a and but I understand that a lot of people don't see it that way, and they see just sex as this basic need. Um, the other issue that I really run into is uh, basically pursuing the profession of upholding the profession of prostitution, and I'm not trying to bring shame on any prostitute, because I understand in this world that it is one of the easiest ways for a woman to make a living and to survive. And I know that there's probably many prostitutes that they generally enjoy their job. I know that for a majority, it's more of a place out of desperation, and it's a place out of um, it's just a way to get by. And I don't know if I personally can say like, man, I really uphold that. I want to put my support into that, um, especially with the gray areas of human trafficking, and those are things that I'm incredibly concerned about. But I know in the countries where prostitution is legal, there's a bit more regulation. I just don't know if these things are the best solution, and that's where I really struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you want to add?
No, that was pretty much how I feel.
So we actually got an email this past week, and we got permission to use it
Yes.
on the air, and So I am going to read this to you. This is from MW, and I believe that she is in New York. Dear Cerebral Conversations, as a person with CP, with mild CP, aged 54, married with 7 children. Not kidding. My husband is able-bodied. I was inspired by your video, number 20, but also upset. As a person who worked in disability rights in the early 80s, I don't know why you keep referring to yourself as crippled. I know it is hard to navigate in our world, whatever one's level of functioning, but it is important to believe you have something to contribute to the world, that you have every right to strive toward marriage and whatever goals that you have set for yourself. I would be very interested in maintaining a dialogue with you and would be excited to offer my perspective to Ron as well. I worked with the New York City mayor's office in the late 70s and also attended Bernard College in New York City. I am particularly interested in CP and how it affects us as we age and what we can do using natural remedies for spasticity. Also, having able-bodied children gives me a unique perspective. Looking forward to hearing from you, MW NYC. So, we have some people that are a bit offended by our use of the word crippled.
Yes.
Why don't you share a little bit of why we use the word crippled?
Well, CJ and I use the word crippled as a term. It's kind of like a term of empowerment because we're choosing to use the word ourselves and not allowing others in society to label us as crippled.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, it's just I don't like the other terms.
And it seems more human to me than all of the other terms, such as disabled, because we are able to do things, or physically challenged. I don't like that term either.
Yeah, for us, it's this personal choice to use the word,
Yes.
and I find it as a liberatory thing. We go into more depth in episode, I believe it's 5. It's labeled defining the terms, and we talk more in depth on why we choose those words. We also give our personal definition of ableism. I think the important thing is for anyone watching these episodes is to know just because we use that word, that doesn't mean that you have to accept that word. If you're not comfortable with that word, you don't have to use it. We don't use it to degrade ourselves. We use it as just a, I guess, a place of empowerment, but also just I find the word liberating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we don't mean to offend anyone. We always welcome feedback, and we're so very happy that MW decided to write us.
And we're not saying that that word is the right word for everyone. If you have a different word that you like more, that's great for you. It's just our personal choice.
Yes. So, for any of you that would like to send us an email of your feedback, trust me, you can write us whatever you want. You can give us some pushback, and we will only share your email if it is with your permission. So if you want to just say, hey, I don't want this to be read on the air, I just want to talk to you about this, you can do that at cerebralconversations@gmail.com.
Yes.
Also, we are on the Twitter.
We are on the Twitter.
What is our handle?
At Cerebral Convos.
You can also check out my blog, The Running Search, at cjcampbell.tk. tumblr.com.
And you can help me fight the vampires on Facebook by looking up Rod Jackson and friending me.
Yes, we would also like this time to share a special announcement. For those of you that peruse our Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/Cerebral Conversations, you will know that we are having our second Chairside Chat. There is an event page that you can join at facebook.com/Cerebral Conversation. We are pushing it for December 1st. That is a Sunday at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We might go a little over, but Ron needs to be out of here by 9, where you can have a live face-to-face conversation with both Ron and I and many other cerebral conversationalists, and we will have an awesome conversation. So for info on that, please check out our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Cerebral Conversations. So we are going to end episode 25. So until next time, keep it cerebral.
Peace.